New Cities, written by Charles Dickens, edited by Richard Maxwell, and illustrated by Hubbolt Knight Brown. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. We had everything before us, we had nothing before us. We're all going direct to heaven, we're all going direct the other way. In short, the period was so far like the present period that some of its noisiest authorities insisted on its being received for good or for evil in the superlative degree of comparison only. Book 1, page 1, The Period. Plot summary exposition. At the opening of the story, meet Jarvis Lorry as he's taking Lucy Manette to meet her father, a freed convict that she never knew. Once they find him, Lucy and Dr. Manette move to England to live a new life. Rising action. You meet Sidney Carton and Charles Darnay. During this time, they both fight for Lucy's affection. Another thing is that French pheasants take over France and destroy the aristocracy. Also, they arrest Darnay for crimes against France. Climax. The climax of the story happens when Darnay has been arrested again. During this time, he finds a letter written by Alexandre Manette that claims he is of French aristocracy. Then he is set to be killed by la guillotine. Summary continued. Falling action. The fate of Darnay is sealed. He must die at the hands of la guillotine. During this time, Sidney Carton visits him in his imprisonment, and they swap clothes. Darnay then goes to live with his family. Another thing is Madame Defarge confronts Mrs. Pross. They get into a fight, and Madame Defarge dies. Resolution. Now, I can't tell you the ending, although it is quite a sad and happy scene at the same time, because no spoilers allowed. Setting. The book is set in London and Paris before and during the French Revolution. The story is set in the conditions that led up to the French Revolution and the Reign of Terror. Characters. Dr. Manette. He's Lucy's father, who spent 18 years as a prisoner where he did nothing but make shoes. Charles Darnay. A French aristocrat by birth, he chooses to move to England because he doesn't like the cruel injustices of the French social system. He ends up marrying Lucy Manette. Sidney Carton. An attorney who sacrifices himself for Darnay. Initially a rude and slovenly character, Carton morally redeems himself in the end. Lucy Manette. A young woman who grew up in England but is actually French. Dr. Manette's daughter and Charles Darnay's wife. Jarvis Lorry, an elderly businessman who works for Tellson. He also assists Lucy, her father, and the rest of the family throughout the book. The exemplary quote. I see a beautiful city and a brilliant people rising from this abyss, and in their struggles to be truly free, in their triumphs and defeats through long years to come, I see the evil of this time and of the previous time, of which this is the natural birth, gradually making expiation for itself and wearing out. Book 3, page 389, chapter 15, The Footsteps Die Out Forever. This quote stands out because at the end of the book you tend to like Sidney Carton more than any other character. It's emotional and touching. It also emphasizes the struggle of the French people during and before this time. The dishonorable quote. These are mere business relations, miss. There is no friendship in them, no particular interest, nothing like sentiment. I have passed from one to another in the course of my business life, just as I passed from one of our customers to another in the course of my business day. In short, I have no feelings. I am a mere machine to go on. Book 1, page 25, chapter 4, The Preparation. What can be changed/improved? I think that this passage doesn't fit because it has relevance to no other part of the book. Earlier, it says that his close relationship to Lucy's father is why he trusted her to take her to London. But later, he becomes one of the closest friends to the family. This is why I think the quote doesn't fit. Critics' Corner, foreshadowing. The first topic I chose was foreshadowing. Foreshadowing is the warning of a future event happening in a book or movie. One major part of foreshadowing is very early in the book. In Chapter 5 of Book 1, they talk about a wine casket falling and breaking on the street. It is described as a brilliant color of red. It was flowing down the streets and was later mixed with the blood of the French. This shows foreshadowing because later in the book, during the war, they describe the blood flowing through the streets and creating a river, and is mixed with the blood is the blood of the French. That is my example of foreshadowing. Critics' Corner, conflict. The second Critics' Corner I chose to do was conflict. The conflict of the story is between the French and the British. The book takes place during the early stages of the French Revolution when peasants take over the aristocracy. That is the main conflict that affects the life of every character. There are also other small conflicts, such as the Farges, who have a rivalry with the Manets. Another small conflict is between Sidney Carton and Charles Darnay, who in the end have an astonishing resolution to their conflict. All about Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens was born on February 7, 1812. He was the middle of 7 siblings. When Dickens grew older, he became one of the most powerful and influential author, journalist, illustrator, editor, and social pundit. In his life, Dickens got married to Catherine Dickens, and together they had 10 children. Dickens also wrote many fascinating novels such as Oliver Twist, Great Expectations, A Christmas Carol, Barnaby Rudge, Nicholas Nickleby, David Copperfield, and of course, A Tale of Two Cities. Unfortunately, Dickens died of a stroke on June 9, 1910, at the age of 58. Dickens' writing versus his life. There are many similarities between the setting and the characters in A Tale of Two Cities to Charles Dickens' setting and characters. A similarity in the setting is that both he and Lucy Manette grew up in London. A similarity with the characters is that both he and Sidney Carton had to start work at a very young age. Some differences in the setting are that Dickens was born a few years after the French Revolution ended, while the shadow of la guillotine still haunted France and England during the book. Character differences are that every character was affected by the French Revolution, although Dickens wasn't born yet. Rating. I would give this book 4.5 out of 5-star rating. The reason for this is that the book has multiple different stories that are intriguing in their own way. Also that the book sheds light on situations that we still face today that the French faced then. Another thing is that the language and topics are made for a larger and older group of people. That is works cited. The first one is my book, and the second one is my most helpful source. Report by Swetha Iyer.